Good morning. It is Monday, the 23rd of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live right here on Euronews. Coming up, EU foreign affairs ministers are gathering in Brussels today to discuss a fresh wave of sanctions against Russia. But there is a spanner in the works. Hungary is blocking a 90 billion lifeline for Ukraine, and Hungary and Slovakia are blocking a new sanctions package until Kiev resumes Russian oil deliveries to Hungary and Slovakia. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who's in the middle of an election campaign, has also asked for several Russian names to be removed from the EU blacklist. For more on this, we can cross straight over to the European Council, where Euronews correspondent Shona Murray is standing by. Shona, quite a twist here, given President von der Leyen was hoping to make a big announcement tomorrow in Kiev. Remind us what exactly is at stake today.
Well, that's right, Maeve. This is going to be a very difficult EU Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting, not the one that they'd hoped for, given that bombshell announcement on Friday and all over the weekend by the Hungarian government that it would block major consequential decisions in relation to Ukraine. And yesterday we heard from the Hungarian Foreign Affairs Minister doubling down on that, saying until Ukraine resumes oil transit to Hungary and Slovakia via the Druzhba pipeline, will not allow decisions important to Kyiv to move forward. And as you mentioned there, they're blocking that €90 billion lifeline loan for Ukraine, which was negotiated with great fanfare just before Christmas and endorsed by all 27 EU member states, although Hungary and Slovakia won't be getting involved in it. That money is so important because Ukraine will run out of cash within the next 6 to 8 weeks. It was supposed to keep the country afloat for the next 2 years. EU officials I've spoken to say they don't know how they're going to move forward with this. In addition, they're both then, Slovakia and Hungary, then blocking the passage of the 20th sanctions package in relation to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And the EU had hoped that this would be passed by the anniversary of the fourth of the full-scale invasion, which is, of course, tomorrow. That doesn't look like it's going to materialise, even though EU officials said that they had made huge progress in this. So officials I've spoken to, again, have said that really this is an inflammatory move by Hungary, but also very much exposes the vulnerabilities around the European Union and the decision-making process, that one country can veto something so consequential for Europe at this point. Maeve?
OK, Shona Murray, thank you so much for that live update. We'll come back to you a little bit later in the programme, so don't go far. But now we'd like to hear the reactions from the Ukrainians. So we have actually our Ukraine correspondent, Sasha Vakalina, with us here on set. Good morning, Sasha. So what does this ultimatum from the Hungarians and the Slovakians mean for Ukraine?
Well, Ukraine firmly rejected and condemned it, saying that this is the energy blackmail. This is the term that was used by Kyiv to describe what's happening. Ukrainian officials said that such actions in the context of Russia's intensified massive strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure are provocative, irresponsible, and they do threaten the energy security of the entire region. Now, in the statement, Ukraine's foreign ministry also said that the governments of Hungary and Slovakia are not only playing into the hands of the aggressor, but also harming their own energy companies that supply energy on a commercial basis. Now, both Slovakia and Hungary are very important in this regard to Ukraine. Slovakia imports around 17% of Ukraine's electricity inputs, and for Hungary it's much higher, it's around 45%. So these are very important numbers there. And at the same time, we have to say that Ukraine is paying commercial price for those electricity inputs. This is what the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry is referring to there. At the same time, Kyiv said that the repairments on the Druzhba pipeline are continuing, also pointing out that it's not Ukraine's fault that it was damaged. This happened during Russian strike on the 27th of January. And also Kyiv did offer the European Union an alternative, saying that temporarily the systems of Odessa-Brody pipeline could also be used to make sure that those transit can continue.
OK, Sasha Vakalina, thank you so much for that update. And to dive even deeper into this topic, coming up, we'll be joined by Maria Malmer Stenergaard, the Foreign Minister of Sweden, a former Minister for Migration known for tightening reforms of Sweden's migration system. Maria Malmer Stenergaard has been in the Foreign Ministry since 2024, mostly focused on Sweden's NATO membership and, of course, on efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Good morning, Minister. Welcome to Europe Today.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
pleasure.
Great to have you with us here on the programme today. Of course, a big day for you. We're expecting tense talks in that Foreign Affairs Minister. It was meant to be just a formality, really, to sign off on this sanctions package. What about this blockage, though, coming from Hungary and Slovakia?
Well, I think it's a shame how they behave. I mean, every delay that we have in the adoption of a sanctions package is a failure for Europe. We need to increase the support for Ukraine. We need to increase the pressure on Russia, hence the sanctions. And I expect them to behave like Europeans today, but I'm not sure.
And Sweden and Finland, you push very hard for this latest package of sanctions. Will you see it then as a personal failure as well if you can't get it through?
Well, I only think about the Ukrainians, and every day that passes when we don't put the maximum amount of pressure on Russia is a failure. So we proposed from Swedish and Finnish side, we proposed, I would say, 3 things. So it's the full services maritime ban, and then it's stopping the import of fertilizers, which is still the 3rd biggest import from Russia, feeding the Russian war economy. And then number 3, stopping the export of luxury products from Europe to Russia, because I think it's a shame that they can still go on shopping as usual.
And this announcement was meant to be made by Ursula von der Leyen tomorrow, symbolically in Kyiv, 4 years since the full-scale invasion began. Will she have to go now empty-handed?
We don't know yet. I'm always optimistic. I really hope that we can put enough pressure on these two countries, but we'll see. There is this council meeting today, and then tonight the ambassadors will meet again. So I've not given up yet.
Because it's not just the sanction package we're talking about; it's also the €90 billion lifeline that Hungary is now blocking.
And we have decided upon that. So it's a disgrace that they don't let it pass. But we will continue to put pressure on them. I'm afraid that there is a lot of domestic politics in all of this, with elections coming up in Hungary. And it's a frustration, of course, when we see that Ukrainians are suffering every day. And also that Russia is getting weaker and weaker. So now is the time to change the calculus.
And what about the talks to end the war, the US brokered talks? Any faith in them? And is it time to have an EU envoy to speak to Vladimir Putin?
Well, the main problem is, regardless of who is there to talk, is that Russia still doesn't want peace. That is why we need to change this calculus, like I said. And this war has been a strategic mistake from the beginning for Russia, because they wanted a Russian Ukraine. They got a European Ukraine. They wanted to stop the expansion of NATO. They got Sweden and Finland in NATO. They have lost allies. They have lost influence. They have lost over 1 million lives. So we still need to put more pressure on them, because they are weakening. And that is the only way to have them interested in serious talks about peace.
And what about EU membership for Ukraine? Would you support this by 2027?
We are great supporters of EU membership for Ukraine, and we also support their path towards EU membership. I mean, still, it's a merits-based process. It's important that they can reach the levels that are required in different areas, but we will do everything we can to make sure that they will be able to become members.
But 2027 not realistic?
It's a very early date, but we will support them in any way to make sure that they can reach that goal.
And just, Minister, another big story we're following here on Euronews, the big announcement from Donald Trump regarding the new global tariffs. How should the EU respond to that?
With unity and with strength, like we've done before. But let me be very clear. Tariffs are taxes. They are very harmful for businesses, for consumers, and for the economy overall. I mean, now I expect the US to explain what is the way forward for them. But of course, we want to have less tariffs. What I prefer is no tariffs.
And if there are more tariffs, should the EU use more stricter tools?
A trade war is not what we need, but if needed, we should be able to show strength and, above all, unity.
OK, Minister, not mincing your words. Thank you so much for coming into us today on Europe Today. All the best for that Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting. But as you heard there, Brussels a little bit in wait and see mode over that fresh announcement from Donald Trump about global tariffs. Senior trade MEPs have been telling us here at Euronews that they're staying calm so as not to add fuel to the fire. But there is a big debate now on whether or not to freeze the EU-US trade deal. For analysis, shortly we'll be joined here on set by our EU News editor, Maria Tadeo. But first, a quick refresher on what exactly is going on. Jakub Janis reports.
In Soviet Russia, there was a famous joke. You turn on the radio and hear about Lenin. You open the newspaper and read about Lenin. Now I'm terrified to open my fridge. These days, one could say the same about Donald Trump and his global tariffs. Because after a US Supreme Court ruling called his last week tariffs unconstitutional, Trump simply doubled down and announced a new 15% import tax anyway. So what actually happened and how it will affect you? The Supreme Court ruled that the US Constitution gives the power of taxation strictly to Congress, not the president. By using emergency laws to tax the world, Trump overstepped his authority. And for the EU, this creates chaos. Last summer's still unratified EU-US trade deal, capping tariffs at 15%, is now in legal limbo. And with those powers voided, the European Commission is asking now for clarity, as European companies could potentially get billions in refunds for the tariffs they already paid. But here is the catch. This doesn't affect Trump's older tariffs on steel, aluminium and cars, which relied on completely different laws. But even with a conservative Republican-nominated majority, the Supreme Court still ruled against Trump. And in response, he publicly attacked the very justices appointed by Republican presidents.
They're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats.
So, back to that fridge joke. If these new tariffs hold, expect whatever the EU imports from the US to get more expensive. But there is hope. Danish shoppers are now using a new app that scans products to help you easily find local alternatives to US imports. So perhaps it's time for Europe to follow the famous motto: improvise, adapt, overcome?
Jakub Janis reporting there, and to hear now what the EU could do, or at least hear what tools they have at their disposal, I'm joined here on set by our EU News editor, Maria Tadeo. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning.
So look, we heard there about this causing chaos in Brussels. What are you hearing?
Well, it is chaos because, Maeve, there are two big questions this morning. One is the validity of the deal that was made between the European Union and the US last year. And then, of course, the question of refunds, which is not a minor question for European companies. And when you look at that ruling on Friday, of course, the Supreme Court does not enter the merit of the tariffs. It does not say whether this is good or right policy, whether this was wrong or right, but it does say that the way in which these tariffs were designed, it is illegal. It's been struck down. The issue is that, of course, those Liberation Day tariffs were the basis of that deal that the EU and the United States cut in the summer, 15% tariff that was included in that package. But over the weekend, I spoke to a number of lawyers who told me, look, if the legal basis changes, you could argue that deal in many ways no longer applies. So there is a question of the validity of it going forward. When it comes to the refunds, European companies have been paying that 15% threshold. Remember, tariffs basically tripled for European companies since the end of last summer. They could say, I want to get a refund. Who's going to pay that differential between the tariffs that were now put over the weekend to sort of salvo the situation from the US and the tariffs that have already been paid? And then, of course, we cannot forget that this deal also included a broader agreement, which also meant investments in the US when it comes to Europe and also the purchases of energy. What the European Parliament is saying, and there will be a meeting today, is that this is not the right time for the full implementation of this deal because, again, the legal basis has changed. So there's a lot of questions. The United States also conceded over the weekend. They do not have an answer to these questions. And then, of course, this deal, which was vilified last summer. Remember, Europe and the Commission was accused of selling out the European Union. This was a deal objectively tilted in favor of the U.S. the argument at the time was it's going to provide certainty and clarity. Well, this morning, I would argue is the complete opposite. There's not a lot of certainty.
There is not, no. Maria Dale, thank you so much for that update. And for more, of course, do take a look at euronews.com. But now, as promised, it is time to head back over to the European Council Foreign Affairs meeting here in Brussels and bring back our Shona Murray, who's been catching up with foreign ministers as they arrive there on the red carpet. Shona, what's the latest?
Well, good morning, Maeve, and welcome back to this Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting on the eve of the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And I'm joined now by the Foreign Affairs Minister of Lithuania, Minister Budrys, who, of course, Lithuania is a frontline country. Minister, just tell us, first of all, your reaction to that bombshell announcement by Hungary over the weekend on Friday about blocking this lifeline loan.
That was very frustrating, of course, and we were expecting that everything was already prepared for the 4th anniversary, and we will be ready to deliver new sanctions package, 20 sanctions package, and also 90 billion euros loan to Ukraine, and that will be something to show that Europe is solid, Europe is resolved, and we can deliver. Now we cannot, and this is really frustrating. On the other hand, it's not the first time when we see one country blocking our collective action for the internal politics. I don't know for what reasons, but they're absolutely in opposite to European security interests. And we have to be very honest about it, whether we are still the family of the countries that are sharing the values, sharing the security interests, and sharing the future, whether we are in 27 really effective, because we cannot be disrupted each time by these vetoes.
Indeed, you told me just a few minutes ago that you will look the Hungarian Foreign Affairs Minister in the eye, Peter Szarto. What do you say to him today?
That's what we expect from the partners, what we expect from the European Union, and we expect a clear explanation how it contradicts their national interests, because this is the only reason how you can block the collective action. And we saw so many times this exploitation of the principle of unanimity. We have to review whether we have to review the very decision-making process, or we have to review the powers of one of the member states, because we cannot continue like this, because so many difficult issues are in front of us.
So that is actually the key question here. That's what everybody I've spoken to over the weekend is saying. This cannot go on, that one country can use and abuse the veto. What should the solution be in relation to Hungary, because it is the country that does it the most?
We have to go into the discussion about the decision-making in the common foreign and security policy and whether we should move to QMV. Lithuania was one of the biggest skeptics, and we were supporters of unanimity. Now I see how it is disrupted each time. Now I'm also leaning to the position that we should use more QMV. Another thing is the principles that we have in Article 7, what allows us to reduce the voting rights of one of the members if we cannot proceed further.
Because with Article 7, just to interrupt you there, I mean, it's not been possible to get a consensus there, or even a two-thirds majority. Do you think that might have changed, that EU member states are a bit more frustrated with Hungary, that they might push for this?
When I see the faces across the table, I understand what is beneath there, what will be the precedent for the future, but we cannot block ourselves, because otherwise we would move to other formats to make a decision, but not the EU. It means that it will be the end for EU as geopolitical actor in the future. So this is what is at stake. I'm not even mentioning the European security architecture in the future. So this is a real tough issue. If we cannot proceed, we cannot each time prepare some carrots to the donkey to move further. So we have to take also sticks.
Okay, so what is the immediate resolution to this? Okay, because if this 90 billion euro loan is blocked, we know that Ukraine is going to run out of money within the next 6 to 8 weeks. What's the solution? Is it bilateral loans from member states? I mean, what to do?
I still have the hope. I'm optimistic that we will proceed further. There are some certain instruments that European Commission has, and there are some interests also of Hungary, what they want to receive from the European Union. So I'm optimistic that we will get there. But we are late, because Ukrainians need money right now. And of course there are bilateral tracks. And on this one we also have to be really honest. Those are Nordic, Baltic countries, Germany, Netherlands, probably Poland, some others. I won't name everyone, but not every country supports Ukraine at the same level. Some of them only talk more than or invest some other material, but not the finances. They need hard currency and money.
Okay, Minister for Lithuania, thank you very much for joining us on Euronews. And back to you, Maeve.
Thank you so much, Shona Murray, and of course to the Lithuanian Foreign Minister, Kęstutis Budrys there. For more on those awkward conversations taking place inside that Foreign Ministers meeting in Brussels, do keep an eye on Euronews.com. And tune in tomorrow morning. We'll have a very special edition of Europe Today focused on the impact the full-scale war on Ukraine has had and what it means as well for the EU. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye from Brussels.